Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
The Madness Entertainment Group presents
Welcome
Madness
to
Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content. Tune in and subscribe to Comic Talk with Pops Van Zant on YouTube.
And now for something completely different.
Hello. There you go. And welcome to Comics Reality with Paul Gomez. I am here live in location from Collected Comics and Games on Denton Highway in Hotham City, Texas. I'm here on location because I'm doing a signing today, but also because the topic of today is LCSs and how to get into them and why you need to. There's a lot of comic book creators out there that strategize whether they just want to go on crowdfunding or they just want to go in conventions. And then there's a lot of them that decide that they want to go into comic book stores. One of my goals whenever I started was I wanted to get my comic book worthy to be on a shelf in a comic book store. This was one of the things that I wanted to show my kids because that's what we were doing is kind of a motivation thing at home. And originally we had started it just kind of to lift up the morale. But I figured showing them that we could make a product that was worthy to be on a bookshelf in one of our favorite bookstores would kind of lift their spirits up. And it's shown a great deal with my kids that they can aspire to do anything that they really want to. We're here at Collected Comics here in Denton Highway in Hotham City, Texas, which is actually one of the first comic book stores that they bought comics at. Whenever I started introducing them into comics, I wanted to take them to a few different comic book stores, and this was definitely one of them that was very welcoming and a great atmosphere. They got to know the owner here, Brent, and he helped show them not only if they got good grades would they be able to get extra comics, but how it helped them to read and motivate them to get a little bit further, better education. So whenever we started doing our comics, that was one of our goals, was to get our comics on shelves. And of course, being able to do signings helps us relate to their customers and our audience and kind of give back a little bit as well. So that's one of the reasons that we're here today. Now, I get a lot of questions from other creators. Me personally, I'm pretty new to creating comics, about a year into it. And having said that, I've actually been placed in about 26 comic book stores in about 3 different states. About 20 to 23 of them are here in Texas. A majority of them are in the DFW area. And that really goes to the fact that building a rapport with the comic book stores really helps out. Going by, dropping off ash cans, talking to the comic book stores, talking to them about what they expect from a comic that's on their shelves and the price points is definitely a key factor. Of course, you want to make sure that you're talking to them and getting to know them and understanding what they're looking for as well. That's really where I started off at. going in, seeing how they were doing, seeing what they expected from comic books, and seeing what sold as well. Of course, most comic creators and most comic book stores will tell you covers sell, and of course, popular comics sell. It's easier whenever you have a set name, whether it's a character like Superman or Batman, or if you have an artist like Tyler Kirkham, or many of these great artists that people just notice their coverage. So it's easier to have those sell and move a little bit more. So someone like me, who's a brand new creator a year into it, kind of has to rely on what you're putting in your content, and getting to know people, building up that fan base. And that's really one of the things that I really aspired to do. I did come in here, especially whenever I was doing research on my first comic or even before, and I started talking to employees, because I honestly believe one of the ways to get an insight into things is to talk to comic book store employees, owners, and customers, because those are the people that are dealing with day in and day out. They kind of know what the customers are looking for, and kind of what sells and what doesn't, and kind of what people are aiming for. So I remember before I actually started my comics, I came in and I talked to a few people, including Tabitha here at Collected Comics, and I asked, what kind of comic book genres sell the most, and what seems to be flying off the shelves, what comes in from the big two or any other comic stores. And that's kind of where I went with my comics. I felt like horror genres are pretty much the frontier at the moment, with the exception of, obviously, the big names like Batman, Superman, X-Men, and whatnot. Other than that, it felt like horror was really at the forefront of most comics that were selling. You have items like Ha Ha and Ice Cream Man and Something's Killing the Children, and great books like this that are newer and don't really have that big, huge fan following at first, but they're still selling very well. Stuff like Stray Dogs isn't something that was cemented in concrete like in the big two for years on year, but it's still one of the hottest titles that were out there. And understanding that and knowing what kind of genre is what is selling at comic book stores is one of the main reasons that I went with my titles that I did. So again, genres is definitely a really thing to keep an eye on. But like I said, whenever you're getting into comic book stores, it really helps building a rapport with the employees, with the owners, and definitely with the customers around. I feel like I have different reputation with different areas. I even though I'm in about 26 stores or whatnot, I had a customer from the New Orleans area actually reach out to me last night and ask if I was going to be coming back to that area anytime soon. And I definitely want to get back to New Orleans, because I had a great time the last time I was there, especially talking to a bunch of the people and getting to know them. And they've reached out to me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and told me how they felt about the comics and wanted me to come back. So I definitely want to go back there. But DFW is really my hometown and the place that I started. And like I said, with Collected, this was actually one of the first places that my kids came and bought comics. We got a pool box, which is always great and helpful to people who are collecting comics, especially one after another. I know we started with one of the Marvel events, and the kids just jumped into that. Now, granted, one of my twins is a little bit off genre, and he decided to go a different route than the big two, and he picks a little bit more independent stuff than my other twin, Dylan, who is kind of more into the Marvel stuff and Miles Morales and stuff like that. But whether you're into those kind of things or not, having a pull box at a comic store definitely helps make sure that you're not missing your comic that you're looking for, especially the hotter selling titles. But like I said, I really wanted to talk about how to get your comics into LCS and how I did it, because it wasn't as simple as just walking in the door and saying, hey, you want to buy my comic? It was more like, can I talk to the person who's purchasing the comics, the owner or the manager? And if they weren't there, I would leave a demo comic there so they can look it over, and then I would come back, ask them if they had any advice, if they had any critiques about my comic, because I definitely love to get criticism to help me out. The way I feel it, any criticisms, constructive criticism, and helps me get to that next level. So whenever talking to comic book store owners or employees, they definitely see comics more often than most, and it's a good thing to get opinions. But one of the first things I did was I would come to the comic book store, ask them if the person who was purchasing comics, if the owner or manager was here. And like I said, if they weren't, don't get discouraged. Leave a demo of your comic. As long as the material is, how do you say it? Decent, not too mature rated, or definitely not off the wall. 9 times out of 10, they're going to look at it at the very least. I always hoped as soon as I dropped off a comic or came back for one to talk to them, that I would get a chance to hear what they would say, because I always wanted to know if my comic wasn't able to get into their stores, what was the reason and how could I fix it. I think one of the main majority problems that I had actually was a barcode. And this isn't something that I actually realized at the beginning. I figured that comic book stores could change the prices and whatnot to their choosing. But I do know that some comic book stores didn't feel comfortable with buying a comic that didn't have a price that was already on it. So make sure you go back and ask them. I mean, it could be something as simple as the graphics that are on the comic, something that's put on there, or the source material. It could be a different size, or some comic book stores don't want to take a chance on buying a comic if they don't feel that it's going to sell. So make sure you go in there and ask them. I definitely have gotten refused a few times, and the way I see it is, if they refuse me, it happens. You just move on. You're not going to be able to sell a comic to everybody, and that goes for the same for LCSs. It's not going to be for everybody. Make sure you appreciate their time and go on to the next. But it doesn't mean that you can't still build a rapport with that comic store or the people there. I've had comic book stores that didn't buy the first round or two that I stopped by, and I would stop by just to see how they were doing, kind of thing, and they would ask to look at the comic, and eventually bought once or twice. I never tried to push my comics. It was more like, hey, I have comics. If you wouldn't mind looking at them, seeing if they're something that you could sell in your stores, if we could talk about them. Now, one of the big things I do want to talk about getting those comics into stores is the price point. And I know a lot of comic creators who go into a store with the same prices that they go into conventions and say, hey, this comic is $6. This comic is $10. And you got to understand that LCSs are going to need to make a dollar or two off of it as well. They're in it to make money just like you are. So whenever you go to an LCS, make sure you understand you've got to split that rate. Me personally, I believe whenever I'm selling to the LCSs, it's more like getting out there and getting my name and getting that exposure. I also feel that it helps selling to them at a discount rate, because eventually and hopefully most LCSs that pick me up might have me in for a signing. Now, that's not true in all cases, but it helps you build a fan base if you do get a signing. Shake hands, greet the people, maybe give a giveaway here and there. So whenever you're dealing with the LCSs, understand that they're trying to make a dollar as well. and they're not going to buy about 300 of your comics. They're probably going to buy a few to see if they sell and then continue on from there. Another thing with dealing with LCSs you might need to understand is some comic book stores might not buy it, but they are open to negotiations. I've actually had a few that took some of my comic books on consignment. Basically, they would put it in their store, they would sell it for a certain price, and they would keep a price of it sold. If it didn't sell, you were welcome to come back and pick them up. And again, I felt that getting into a comic store is the best case scenario, because it is going to have your comics out there and get you known a little bit better and open up a different market for you. I've had a store that actually took about 10 of my books on consignment originally, and then the next time I came in, they asked for about 30 of them that they wanted to buy instead of just consignment. So it really is depending on how you deal with them and the rapport that you have with them, to how you're going to be selling those comics at LCSs. Make sure you're understanding it's not a cut and dry thing. You're not going to go in there with the comic book that you priced for about $5-6 and expect to get that same amount from them. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but you need to understand that the chances of that happening are going to be slim. Now, I know as a creator, you're trying to make a profit, but understand, if you're a brand new creator, nobody knows who you are or what your product is. So it's even harder to make that profit until you gain a little traction. So dealing with LCSs, make sure you don't burn any bridges or take anything they say as something that's going to close the door that you might need to open later on. I haven't been picked up exactly by a big publisher. A friend of mine actually just got picked up recently, and it kind of reminds me of that fact. How you deal with some LCSs in the beginning is going to actually tell how they're going to deal with you later on as well. Just because you get picked up by a publisher doesn't mean that they're going to, again, buy your comics in the store. You might have your comics in previews or one of the bigger publishers, but the fact of the matter is you still have to market it. You still have to get out there. You still have to build that rapport with LCSs. I've been picked up by 2 LCSs that were out of state, one in New Orleans and one in New Mexico, and I felt very lucky that they picked me up. I try to keep in contact with them even though they're not my home state, and message them and say, hey, how is the book selling? Can I send you some more? Is there a possibility that I might be able to stop by and do a signing for you one day, kind of thing, even though it's not in my backyard, like most of the stores that I've sold to. It still builds that rapport. There's always that possibility that one day you might get picked up, and that LCS is going to remember the fact that you sold them the store, the fact that you were courteous to them, and that you kept in touch with them. I know one store I sold a few comics to, and they asked me if I would sign every one of the comics that I sold to them, which I had no problem with. Me personally, I don't believe signatures really it takes more than a second or two of my time, and I'm still shocked whenever anybody asks for it. So I definitely, if anybody asks me for a signature, including an LCS or somebody who's buying a quantity of mine, I'm more than glad to give it to them. I'm happy to get my product out there, happy to get it to a new fan, and hopefully build a connection with someone that not only I'll be able to help out, but will be able to help me out by putting my comic where people can see it. And those are really, really the key factors whenever I say talking and selling to LCSs. It's not just one of those things. Like I said, you don't expect to go in there and sell right away. You don't expect to go in there and sell a stack of books right away. And you want to build a relationship not only with your fans, but the LCSs as well. And I know before I started making comics, one of the biggest things that I used to do is go into an LCS and say, hey, what's new? What would you recommend? As a matter of fact, I found several of my favorite key comics just by doing that. Walking into a store and saying, hey, what do you recommend? So whenever you're selling to LCSs, remember, not just talk to the managers or the owners of the store, talk to the employees. They're going to have great insight that are going to help you out too. Don't close your mind off to just about anyone. Make sure you go out there, talk, let them know what you're dealing with and what you have, and kind of explain to them and let them know where you're coming from. And I've said it several times, but building that rapport is really the key factor whenever it comes to LCSs, building a fan base. You want to make sure that you're out there, you're getting your name out there. You're talking about your book, but you also want to make sure that you're building friends and letting them know that this isn't just something that you're going to forget whenever you sell it to them. Collected Comics here on Denton Highway, right here in Haltom City, has been a great friend, not only to me, but my kids. And like I said, this was the first store that they really came in and started building, talking to the employees here and enjoying comics. So it was a treat, especially today, being able to sign for this LCS. The fact that they carried my book since my first issue was definitely something that just hits me deep down inside, because I appreciated that. And I appreciate just about any store out there that really carries me. So please understand, dealing with LCSs isn't exactly like a convention. It's not exactly like being on a Kickstarter or crowdfunding. This is a little more personal and it's a little more intimate. So go in there, talk to people, enjoy yourself, and realize you're not just selling a comic or you're not just selling a product. You're selling yourself, and you're selling that experience that you give to people. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure you're getting your work out there and building that fan base, but you're building friendships and connections that are going to last a while. This isn't something that you just take for granted and just expect them to automatically buy what you're selling or putting out there. You want to put yourself and your passion into your projects, and you want to make sure that you're talking and building relationships with the LCSs as well. Because if you don't believe in your projects, how are they going to believe in it for you? It's not just about making money, because if you're going to go in there and just try to sell it at the maximum amount, then how are they going to get anything from it as well? To me, it was always a family kind of thing. Me bringing my kids in here, talking to the employees and the managers of the store. So whenever I came in to sell it, it was being able to come in and talk to them, being able to show them what we did and where we're at and how we're growing in a product and the fan base, and how we want to bring more fans to them as well as bring fans to us as well. So the main thing I really wanted to say is, whenever you're going out to LCSs, go out there and talk to them. Enjoy yourself. Get your product out there. Sell yourself, but remember, it's not just about the money. It's about the connections that you're building. It's about the family and friends, and it's about the project that you have a passion about. I want to definitely thank all the LCSs that have picked me up. I want to thank my fans out there that have supported me, and definitely those fans that have talked to LCSs and brought me in, whether it was just to have a signing, whether it was just to pick up or carry a book. I know that at least one or two fans had talked to LCSs before I even talked to them. And so whenever I went to go talk to them, I said, this person asked me to come bring you my books, and if I sold you them, for you to drop it into their Dropbox. So make sure, if you're a fan, have a Dropbox. Have something easy that you can go back to those LCSs and say, hey, I want to pick up my comics for the week or the month or whatnot. And if you know that there's an independent creator around, ask the independent creators. So that's really the majority of what I have for it whenever it comes to LCSs. But like I said, it really is about the communication. There are a few small things I know I'm missing, like I know most of the LCSs ask me for my A covers as opposed to any of the variants, and you need to understand it's really their choice on what they're going to carry. Some LCSs will ask for a variant or two, but usually most of them are going to ask for those A covers because they're going to want to see how they sell, and they're not going to try to outprice themselves if they're going to buy a few extra issues and try to sell them at a higher rate. But it really is, different from one LCS to another. Whether they pick up 2 books, 3 books, 10 books, it's one of those things that you should be appreciative just that they're going to put it on their shelves, and the fact that they're introducing your comics to their customers. I'm trying to think of what else really went into it. I know, like I said, the barcode was definitely one of the selling factors at one point. Whenever I first went around, they asked me if they were barcodes. They asked me for a number of issues, and they asked me for a little bit of other things. One of the things I've been starting to do was kind of start a menu, if you will. A flyer that shows all my books and shows all the covers and their different price points, not only for what they are for the customers, but what they are for what I usually offer the LCSs. Now, on those flyers that I just started, I actually put on the bottom very, very bold ink that all prices are negotiable, or that other arrangements can be offered. You want to make sure, like I say, you're accessible. Make sure you leave them a card if you have them, with the number and a place that they can contact you at. This definitely was one of the mistakes that I ran into early on. I had sold to a comic book store, and they sold out within the week, and they were trying to contact me, but they didn't have my information. So make sure that you're sending a card, or write it on a book that you give personally to the owner. I usually try to give anyone who has me for a signing a special book. I'll usually sign something for them, and I try to put a little extra information or whatnot. But make sure that you're giving them the information. Make sure you're listening to what they need, and it's not just about you, and it's not just about your book. Understand that different LCSs cater to different people. So if you're building a more mature book, there's going to be a lot of LCSs that might not carry you, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to. Make sure you ask. I know that there was one LCS specifically that carried a few of my books, and I had a friend who had a more mature line, and I never saw any mature books in the store, but I happened to ask them if they had carried any, and sure enough, they did. They had a small clientele of about 20 or 30 people that enjoyed those more mature books, and they kept them kind of in that back room and would order them kind of depending on what the customers asked for. So whenever I mentioned that I had a friend who had a book, I actually showed them the book that they did, and they asked to buy a few. So don't get discouraged. I mean, if there's any advice that I can give you whenever it comes to LCSs, don't get discouraged. Go out there, talk to them, find out what they need, find out if there's anything you can do. Make sure to be polite, smile, and understand. You're helping them, they're helping you. And that's really what it is with comics. We're making sure we're all in this together. Don't get discouraged and go out there. Make sure, put the boots on the ground, do your due diligence, go out there and do the work. I spent hours, maybe weeks, going to comic book stores and talking to these people. Like I said, it wasn't a matter of being able to go in there one day and selling automatically. I'm not saying that hasn't happened, but that isn't the normal case. Usually it would be like I would go out there. They would give me a time to come back. I would drop a demo. I would come back. I would listen to what they would have to say. We would talk, negotiate about things, and then it would go from there. But getting into the 25, 26 stores that I was in, it wasn't here's my book, how much are you going to pay me for it kind of thing. It's one of those things, like I said, you build a rapport, start talking to these people, understand they're doing you a service by carrying your book. It's not the other way around. The price points, make sure you understand they're not going to pay the same price that the customer's going to pay, because they do have to make a dollar or two. I try to sell mine to comic stores at cost or just barely over, because I believe, again, they got to make a cut from it. But also, me personally, I believe that I make most of mine from Kickstarter, from conventions, and from signing. So if you're not building that rapport with some LCSs, you might never get into a store signing. You might never get your next book onto their shelf. If you have a book that doesn't sell right away, why would they give you a second chance if they're paying so much for those books? I know one bookstore I went to, they were always pretty discouraged about selling comics, and they said that they didn't have any comic book creators or artists that came into their store. So I made them a promise, and I've held it up to it, is that every time I got a new book, their store would be the first bookstore that I went into, first bookstore that I would do a signing for, and the first store that I would sell them to. And that's what I've done, trying to keep and help them out, as well as, again, like I said, they helped you out by putting your books on their shelf and by pushing you sometimes. So make sure you're appreciative, not just the fact that they're buying your books, but that they're doing that work for you as well. I don't know what else I have this week. It really is a short week. I didn't have a guest. I really wanted to show this amazing comic book store off. Like I said,
Comic Books for Kids provides
there you are. Sorry about that. That's minor difficulties. Like I said, this is a great bookstore. Here we are. You can see my posters over the side of me right there. My table being set up back there. And they have tons and tons of items. This is definitely one of the biggest bookstores around, and I wanted to make sure to show a little bit of it off. Collected here on Denton Highway. And just to show a sign back there. You want to wave and say hi?
Hey guys.
Awesome. So like I say, make sure you're coming in, talking to people, and understanding. This is definitely not one of those things that you just come in and drop stuff off. Collected isn't just a bookstore. It's a family where people can come around, hang out, sit down and talk, enjoy things, and have events. That's really all I got this week at the moment. Pops, what do you got back there?
Oh, I got a new avatar. What do you think of that?
How's it?
Hey, Manny Soto drew that, bro.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Look at that.
See that? We always got cool stuff going on around here. Thank you, Paul. That was a very informative trip through the aisles of how to deal with getting your book into a comic book store. Something that's been like my main goal for you guys since I started doing this. And not just for you guys, but for my own selfish self. I want to go to my local comic book store and be able to get your books and Christie's books and whoever else, everybody's books, right there without having to pay $10, $12, $15 to have each one individually shipped to my freaking house.
Right.
So that's why part of what I'm doing is with the roadshow is going and building that kind of rapport as a network with the comic stores, and bringing people like you to them to do signings and give them exposure. Look, we got to help them too. We ought to go to that. Hey man, we sell our book. Well, are you promoting the store? Do you promote your local comic book store? Do you tell people about it? Do you give them a reason to love you back? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like the road goes both ways, you guys.
Yeah, definitely. This is what I say. I mean, make sure you're coming in, talking to, even if you're not selling the books, see how they are doing, how they're doing, and see what is selling. I mean, how are you going to know what customers are looking for if you're not talking to those people who are selling them the most?
Yeah, we went into Fanfare. Chris and I went into Fanfare on Saturday, and had a little talk with the people in there and told them what we got coming and what we plan on doing, and we even made a little ad spot for them from outside, pointing at the sign,
awesome.
Outside the store and stuff, and they were really cool, and they let us. They heard what we had to say.
Yeah, definitely. And I was at a convention this weekend, Laredo, Texas. Oh man, it was amazing, Pops. Let me tell you, I have not had so many fans ask me for my picture at a con or at a signing more than I did this past weekend. I mean, it was like every other person that came up to the table was like, "Can I get a picture of you? I heard about this. Can I get a picture of you with this book?" And I was amazed. I mean, it was.
Check me out.
It was great, Pops, and getting to talk to these customers.
For 2023, you have to let me know which show you had the most fun at, the one that you did the best at, so that we can bring the madness to that show for you in 2023 and bring you in on our booth and, highlight you as our featured artist, take you to a store on Monday and do a signing. You tell me what show you want to do this at, okay, so that we can schedule it for the roadshow. All right?
Yeah, definitely. Because like I said, man, Laredo, this was the first time that I did Laredo this past weekend, and it was just crazy. I mean, it was a smaller venue, and whenever I first started setting up, I was like, oh, it's going to be smaller. There's not going to be that many people. But it was like the whole town showed up. The whole city, it was just one customer after another. And for them to be asking me for a picture, it was kind of, it was really humbling, Pops. I mean, I'm still getting used to people asking me for signatures, but for them to be asking me for pictures, it was great. It was. I wish you were there.
I wish I was there too. That's what I'm saying. I want to make sure that we get this set up, right? That we get it set up, so I make sure I go to one of your shows.
Right.
I do the best I can. We get out to as many different platforms as we can. We do the best we can. Sometimes people get the impression that I'm getting paid to do this for people.
I'm telling you. It's just crazy. I've been enjoying it, and I got to take my kids. I don't know if you saw the pictures, Pops, but I got to take both of my boys, the twins, and they were there dressed up, and they were selling. They were enjoying themselves. They met some of the actors there. It was pictures, Paul. It was just one thing after another. And thank you to the actors who talked to my kids, because we don't usually talk to the actors and stuff because I know they're working too. But Frank, I forget his last name, but he went out of his way talking to my son, and we loved it. We got a few pictures with them. We enjoyed ourselves. And like I said, we talked to some of the LCSs down there, and we were enjoying ourselves the entire weekend.
That's awesome. It's awesome. So you got to decide which one of them shows you want us to book.
I think I'm losing you.
You got to decide which one of them shows you want us to book a booth at, bro. Let me know. Oh, did we lose him? I think we lost him.
Yeah, I think I'm losing you, Pops.
All right.
I don't know who's in it. It's my phone, probably.
We got you. We're signing off, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
That's how you do it. You just say bye.
That's right. That's how you do it. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
How do you end this thing? How do you put where's the brakes on this bus? I forgot.
Jazz hands. Are good.
Comic Books for Kids provides comic books to kids in hospitals and cancer centers across the U.S. It's a place where we can all work together to make sure every child has a comic book. 100% of all proceeds go towards the kids. It's about making a difference, and while they're in the hospital, allowing them to fly like a superhero, battle dragons, or rescue teddy bears. We are in every state in the country and now support over 160 hospitals.